I did it because he was my son. For 27 years, I watched him grow from a boy who chased geese along the waterfront to a man who could split a cord of wood before breakfast. When my boy died in that logging accident outside Nipigon, or so I was told, I made a promise standing beside his grave in the frozen ground of Riverside Cemetery. I would take care of his family. I would make sure his wife and their little girl never struggled for a single thing. Not while I still had breath in my lungs. My name is Gerald Mackey. I'm 64 years old. I live in a small bungalow in Thunder Bay, Ontario. The same house I bought in 1989 when lumber prices were good and a working man could still afford a home. My wife Doreen passed in 2016. Cancer. After that, it was just me and the quiet. Then my son came back from out west, settled down, married a girl named Vanessa from Kenora, had a daughter they named Lily. For a few years, life felt full again. Saturday dinners at my kitchen table, Lily's laughter ringing through the house, my boy fixing the Evestrefs without me asking. Then came the phone call. January, 4.5 years ago, an RCMP officer telling me there had been an accident at a logging site near Nipigon. A tree had fallen wrong, crushed the skidder cab. They recovered what they could. Dental records confirmed it. My boy was gone. I buried him on a Tuesday. The wind chill was -38. My hands shook so badly the priest had to help me throw the dirt. After the funeral, I sat down with Vanessa in her apartment on Simpson Street. She was crying. Lily was 4 years old, sitting on the carpet drawing pictures of snowmen. I told Vanessa I would help. Every month, I would give her $2,000. Not a loan. A gift. For Lily. For groceries. For rent. For whatever she needed. Vanessa hugged me and called me the best father-in-law anyone could ask for. $2,000 a month is a lot of money for a retired millworker. My pension from Resolute Forest Products covered my property tax, my heating bill, and not much else. So I went back to work. Not at the mill. My back couldn't handle that anymore. I took a job driving a delivery van for a courier company. 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, loading and unloading boxes in Thunder Bay winters. My knees swelled. My shoulders seized up every morning. Some nights I sat in the bathtub with the hot water running just to loosen the joints enough to sleep. But every first of the month, I drove to Vanessa's apartment, climbed the 3 flights of stairs because the elevator had been broken since September, and handed her an envelope with $200 bills inside. She always smiled when she opened the door, always thanked me, always told me Lily was doing well, that she asked about Grandpa Gerald every day, that she'd started drawing houses instead of snowmen. But Vanessa never invited me in, not once in 4.5 years. She'd take the envelope, we'd talk for maybe 3 minutes in the hallway, and then she'd say Lily was napping or that she had an appointment. The door would close, and I'd walk back down those stairs with my knees screaming at every step. I told myself it was grief, told myself she needed space, told myself different people heal in different ways and it wasn't my place to push. I was a fool. It was a Wednesday in October when everything changed. My neighbor Bev Ostrander knocked on my door at 7 in the morning. Bev was 71, a retired Canada Post letter carrier who'd lived next door for 20 years. Tough woman. Raised 3 kids on her own after her husband left. Didn't gossip, didn't meddle, minded her own business. So when she showed up on my doorstep before I'd even had my coffee, I knew something was wrong. "Gerald," she said, stepping inside without waiting to be asked. "We need to talk and you need to sit down." I made coffee. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where my boy used to do his homework, where Doreen and I used to play cribbage on Friday nights. Bev wrapped her hands around the mug but didn't drink. "How long have you been sending money to your daughter-in-law?" she asked. "Every month since the funeral." "Why?" Bev looked me dead in the eyes. 2 weeks ago, my sister Marlene had surgery at the Health Sciences Center in Winnipeg. I drove down to help her recover. She lives in Street Boniface, near the river. On Saturday, I went to pick up her prescriptions at the Shoppers Drug Mart on Provencher Boulevard. And I saw him. Gerald. Saw who? Your boy. My hand stopped halfway to my coffee cup. "I know what you're going to say," Bev continued. "I thought I was crazy too. but I watched him for 10 minutes. He was loading boxes into a pickup truck outside a storage unit. And Gerald, he still does that thing. That thing with his shoulder. My son dislocated his right shoulder playing hockey when he was 15. It never sat properly after that. Every time he lifted something heavy, his shoulder would hitch up first, like a shrug, before he could extend his arm. The doctors said it was a rotator cuff issue. He was supposed to get surgery, but he kept putting it off. Said he didn't have time. I know my boy's shoulder. I've watched that hitch 1,000 times. Watched it when he helped me shingle the roof. Watched it when he carried Lily on his shoulders at Canada Day. No one else moves like that. Are you sure? I asked. My voice didn't sound like mine. I went back the next day, Bev said. And the day after. He's living in an apartment on Rue du Moulin. There's a woman with him. Younger. Dark hair. They go to that storage unit every few days. Gerald, I don't think your son is dead. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the furnace click on and off, trying to make my brain accept what Bev had told me. It couldn't be true. I'd gone to the funeral. I'd seen the casket lowered into the ground. I'd read the RCMP report. Dental records confirmed it. But Bev didn't make things up. In 20 years, I'd never known her to exaggerate or lie about anything. On Friday, I told the courier company I needed a week off. Family emergency. Then I drove 6 hours to Winnipeg. I found the apartment building on Rue du Moulin without trouble. Bev had given me the exact address. It was a brick, low-rise, 4 stories, nothing special. I parked across the street in a Tim Hortons lot and waited. At 11 in the morning, a man came out the front door, average height, wearing a blue bomber's cap and a canvas jacket. He was carrying a duffel bag to a gray pickup truck parked on the street. He tossed the bag into the bed of the truck, and there it was. That hitch, that shrug of the right shoulder before the arm extended. My chest felt like someone had poured concrete into it. I watched him drive away. Then I sat in my car for 2 hours, not moving, not thinking, just sitting there while the engine idled and the heater blew warm air I couldn't feel. I drove back to Thunder Bay that night. Went straight to Bev's house. It's him, I said. She nodded. I'm sorry, Gerald. How long has this been going on? I don't know. But I've been watching for 2 weeks, and there's a pattern. He goes to that storage unit on Tuesdays and Saturdays. The woman goes to work at a bar on Corridon Avenue most evenings. And Gerald, there's something else. On Tuesday, I saw Vanessa there. She drove down from Thunder Bay. She met your boy and the woman at the storage unit. They were loading boxes. Cash, from what I could see. Bundles of it. Vanessa knows. Of course she knows. The money. The $2,000 every month. She's been giving it to him. That's what it looks like. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but nothing came. It was like my body had forgotten how. Where's Lily? I asked. Bev's face softened. That's the part that made me come to you. I did some asking around. Vanessa's mother, Jean, lives in Dryden. Lily's been living with her for almost 3 years. Vanessa told everyone it was because Lily needed stability after losing her father. But Gerald, Jean is 75. She has arthritis in both hips. She's raising that child alone. 3 years. My granddaughter had been living 2 hours away in Dryden for 3 years, and no one told me. Vanessa told me Lily was with her, told me Lily was asking about Grandpa, told me Lily was drawing houses. I hired a private investigator the next morning. His name was Frank Burrows, a former Winnipeg police detective who'd gone private after 25 years on the force. I found him through a recommendation from a lawyer friend of Bev's. I gave him every detail I had and wrote him a check for $2,000, the same amount I would have given Vanessa that month. Find everything, I told him. I want to know what name my son is using, where he's living, what the plan is. I want photographs. I want documents. I want proof that I'm not losing my mind. Frank Burrows was worth every dollar. Over 3 weeks, he assembled a file thicker than a phone book. The truth was worse than anything I'd imagined. My son was living under the name David Makinen. He had a fake Manitoba driver's license, a phony social insurance number, a bank account at a credit union in Street Vital. He'd been in Winnipeg for 4 years, living in that apartment on Rue du Moulin with a woman named Cassandra Flett, who tended bar at a restaurant on Corridon. The logging accident was staged. My son had paid a man named Darren Whitfield, a foreman at the logging company, $15,000 to help him disappear. Darren had disabled the GPS tracker on the skidder, set the scene to look like a tree strike, and arranged for falsified dental records through a contact at a dental clinic in Sudbury. The remains in the casket weren't my boy. They were from an unclaimed body at a hospital morgue, cremated and placed to pass a cursory identification. Why? Debt. My son owed $140,000. Not to a bank, to people you don't want to owe money to. He'd gotten into sports gambling, online at first, then through a bookie in Thunder Bay connected to people in Toronto. He'd bet on hockey, football, basketball, anything with a line. He'd won sometimes, which was the worst thing that could have happened, because it made him think he could win again. By the time the losses caught up, he was in so deep that the people he owed started making threats. Not against him, against Vanessa, against Lily. So instead of coming to me, instead of asking his father for help, he decided to die. The plan was Vanessa's idea. According to Frank's investigation, she'd been having an affair with Darren Whitfield for a year before the accident. She wanted out of her marriage, out of Thunder Bay, out of her life as a mother. The gambling debt gave them the excuse. Fake the death, collect the insurance, let the idiot father-in-law send money every month, save everything up, and disappear. The insurance payout was $50,000 from my son's group policy through the logging company. Vanessa got it all. On top of that, she'd been receiving my $2,000 every month for 4.5 years. That was $108,000 of my money. And Cassandra Flett, the bartender, was earning another $1,800 a month, saving most of it. Frank had obtained recordings. How he got them, I didn't ask. In one recording, my son was talking to Vanessa and Cassandra in the apartment in Winnipeg. They were discussing their finances. The old man just keeps sending it, my son said. He's working himself half to death driving that delivery van. 64 years old, loading boxes in January. I feel kind of bad about it. Kind of, Vanessa said. Don't get soft on me now. 2 more months and we're gone. I had to stop the recording the first time I heard it. I sat in my truck in Frank's office parking lot and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. My son, the boy I'd taught to skate on the rink I flooded in the backyard every winter. The boy I'd driven to every hockey practice for 12 years. The boy who'd held my hand at Doreen's funeral and said, "I'll always be here for you, Dad." I played the recording 3 more times. Each time, something inside me went quieter. Not angrier, quieter, like a lake freezing over. Frank gave me one last piece of information. In 6 weeks, my son, Vanessa, and Cassandra were planning to leave Canada. They had tickets to Mexico City booked under false names. One way, they'd accumulated nearly $200,000 between the insurance payout, my money, Cassandra's savings, and cash from selling off items at the storage unit. Once they crossed the border, they'd vanish. I went to the police the next day. The RCMP detachment in Thunder Bay connected me with an officer named Constable Reed, who specialized in fraud cases. I brought Frank's entire file. Constable Reed looked through it for 45 minutes without speaking. Then she picked up her phone and called the RCMP Commercial Crime Unit in Winnipeg. "This is solid," she said to me after she hung up. "Insurance fraud, identity fraud, forgery. If they try to leave the country on false documents, that's another set of charges. We'll coordinate with Winnipeg and the border services, but we need to catch them in the act." "What about my granddaughter?" I asked. She paused. "How old is she?" 7. "She's living with her grandmother in Dryden. Her mother hasn't been involved for 3 years. We'll contact Children's Services. After this is resolved, you can apply for custody. You're her grandfather. Given the circumstances, I think a court would look favorably on that." For the next 6 weeks, I kept up the routine. I drove to Vanessa's apartment on the 1st of every month. I climbed those 3 flights of stairs. I handed her the envelope. She smiled her empty smile and told me Lily was doing wonderfully. The last time, I stood in that hallway and looked at her face, really looked at it, and I saw nothing. No guilt, no shame, no trace of the woman who'd stood beside my son at their wedding and promised to be part of this family. She was already gone, had been for years. The night before they were scheduled to fly out, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table until 4 in the morning, drinking tea and looking at a photograph of my boy when he was 10 years old. Gap-toothed, wearing a Thunder Bay Wolves jersey, holding up a pike he'd caught at Lake Nipigon, grinning like the world was made for him. I put the photograph face down on the table and drove to the airport. The RCMP had coordinated with Canada Border Services. 6 officers in plain clothes were positioned inside Winnipeg Richardson International Airport. I was there too. Constable Reed had said I didn't need to be, but I told her I did. I needed to see it. They came through the main entrance at 6:30 in the morning. My son walked in first, pulling a black carry-on. He'd shaved his head, grown a beard, wore glasses, but I'd know that shoulder hitch anywhere in the world. Cassandra walked beside him, holding his arm. Vanessa was behind them, pulling a large suitcase and looking over her shoulder every few seconds. They made it as far as the check-in counter. I watched from 30 meters away as the officers closed in from 3 directions. My son saw them first. His eyes swept the terminal, and for one heartbeat, they found mine. I saw surprise, then understanding, then something I couldn't name. He didn't run. I'll give him that. He stood perfectly still while an officer approached him and asked him to step aside. Cassandra's face went white. Vanessa dropped her suitcase handle and started shaking. They searched the luggage. Inside, they found $176,000 in Canadian and American cash, 3 fraudulent Canadian passports, and 3 one-way tickets to Mexico City. My son looked at me as they placed him in handcuffs. "Dad," he said. "Just let me explain." I walked up to him, close enough that I could see the lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 4.5 years ago. Close enough to smell coffee on his breath. "You let me believe you were dead," I said. "You let me grieve you. You let me work until my body broke to send money to your wife, and you laughed about it. You abandoned your daughter. Your little girl has been living with a 75-year-old woman with bad hips for 3 years, and you never once checked on her. There is no explanation for that. There is nothing you can say." He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. They took them away in 3 separate cruisers. I stood in that airport for a long time after, watched families hugging at arrivals, watched children running to their parents, watched the world go on as if nothing had happened. The trial lasted 8 months. The Crown prosecutor was meticulous. Frank's evidence, the recordings, my bank statements showing 4.5 years of monthly payments, the forged documents, the staged death scene, Darren Whitfield's testimony after he cut a deal, all of it laid out piece by piece. The defense argued my son had been under extreme duress from the gambling debts, that he'd feared for his family's safety, that he'd made a desperate choice and deserved compassion. The jury was out for 4 hours. My son received 9 years in a federal institution. Vanessa received 7. Cassandra received 4. Darren Whitfield received 3 years less a day in a provincial facility for his cooperation. The judge also ordered restitution. The $176,000 seized at the airport was placed in trust. After the insurance company recovered its $50,000, the remainder was designated for Lily's care. My lawyer helped me set up a registered education savings plan in her name. I put every dollar into it. The week after sentencing, I drove to Dryden. Jean lived in a small bungalow near the highway. The siding needed paint. The front step was cracked. She answered the door slowly, leaning on a cane. "Gerald," she said. She looked like she'd aged 10 years since I last saw her. "I'm here for Lily. And I'm here to help you." She started crying before I finished the sentence. Lily was in the backyard, sitting on a plastic lawn chair with a sketchbook in her lap. She was bundled in a winter jacket 2 sizes too big, drawing with colored pencils. When she heard me coming, she looked up. She had my son's eyes, Doreen's chin, my father's stubborn jaw. "I know you," she said. "You're Grandpa Gerald." That's right, sweetheart. Grandma Jean said you might come visit. I sat down in the snow next to her chair. Can I see what you're drawing? She turned the sketchbook toward me. It was a picture of a house. A yellow house with a big front window and a tree in the yard. Two people standing outside. One tall and one small. That's where I want to live, she said. Somewhere warm with a big window so I can draw when it's snowing outside. That's a beautiful house, I said. It has a tree for climbing, she said, and a garden in the summer. Grandma Jean said gardens are a lot of work, but I don't mind. I looked at Jean, standing in the doorway, leaning on her cane, exhaustion and relief mixed on her face. She nodded at me, a small nod. Permission. The custody process took 5 months. Jean was too elderly and too ill to continue caring for a child. Both of Lily's parents were incarcerated. Children's Services conducted home visits, background checks, interviews. My lawyer filed the paperwork. The court reviewed everything. On a bright day in April, I brought Lily home to Thunder Bay, to my bungalow. The same house where my son grew up, where Doreen made butter tarts at Christmas, where I'd flooded the backyard every winter to make a rink. The house that had a tree in the front yard, a Manitoba maple, old and sturdy, with branches low enough for a 7-year-old to climb. I enrolled Lily in school at Algonquin Road, walked her there every morning, picked her up every afternoon. I learned to make lunches that weren't just ham sandwiches, learned to braid hair from a YouTube video, learned that 7-year-old girls have opinions about everything and aren't shy about sharing them. In May, we planted a garden in the backyard. Lily chose the flowers. Marigolds, because they were orange. Sunflowers, because they were tall. And one wild rose bush, because Grandma Jean had told her those were the toughest flowers in Ontario. We got dirt under our fingernails. I accidentally sprayed her with the hose, and she laughed so hard, she fell over into the garden bed. That night, she put a marigold in a glass of water on my kitchen table, right in the center, where my son used to sit. Bev came over for dinner most Sundays. She'd sit on the front porch with me while Lily drew at the kitchen table through the window, just like she used to draw at Vanessa's apartment, except now I could see her, could hear her humming to herself, could watch her tongue poke out the side of her mouth when she was concentrating on getting a petal exactly right. You gave that girl a chance, Bev said one evening, watching the sun go down over the lake. I don't know if I did the right thing, I said. I don't know if there was a right thing. The right thing was not letting them take her future along with everything else they stole. I thought about my son sometimes, more than I wanted to, wondered if he sat in his cell and thought about the rink in the backyard, the pike he'd caught at Lake Nipigon, the day Lily was born, and how he'd called me at 3 a.m. just to say, "Dad, she's perfect. She's got your jaw." I wondered if he remembered any of it, or if he'd thrown it all away so completely that there was nothing left to remember. Probably not. People who can do what he did don't hold on to those things. They can't. If they did, they wouldn't be able to live with themselves. Lily turned 8 in June. We had a party in the backyard. Bev came. 3 girls from Lily's class. Jean made the trip from Dryden, moving slower than before but smiling wider than I'd seen in years. I grilled hamburgers and Lily blew out her candles on a cake from the Finnish bakery on Bay Street, the same bakery where Doreen and I used to buy pulla bread on Saturday mornings. "Make a wish," I said. Lily closed her eyes tight. Then she blew. Every candle, one breath. Later that night, after Jean had gone to the guest room and the house was quiet, Lily came padding down the hallway in her pajamas. "Grandpa Gerald?" "Yeah, sweetheart." She climbed into the chair next to me at the kitchen table. The same table where my boy and I used to eat breakfast, where Doreen and I played cribbage, where Lily's marigold still sat in its glass of water, somehow holding on. "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask me anything." She looked down at her hands. "Are you going to go away, too?" My chest clenched so hard I thought my ribs would crack. "No, Lily. I'm not going anywhere. I promise you that." She was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned into me, her head against my arm. "Good. Because I like it here. I like the garden and I like the tree and I like that you walk me to school every day. And I like you." I put my arm around her. held her close. I like you too, kiddo. Very much. She fell asleep against my shoulder. I didn't move. Sat there in the quiet kitchen, listening to her breathe, feeling her warmth, looking through the window at the maple tree in the front yard, the same tree my son used to climb, the same tree Lily would climb now. I thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd found. I'd lost my son, not to a logging accident, not to death, but to something colder, to greed and cowardice and the kind of betrayal that doesn't leave a scar because it goes too deep for that. It goes all the way through. But I'd found Lily, a second chance I didn't know I needed. For 4.5 years, I climbed 3 flights of stairs with ruined knees, worked myself raw driving a delivery van in Canadian winters, and gave every spare dollar I had to support what I thought was my son's grieving family. Turns out I was funding his escape, but now, I still drive that van. My knees still swell. My back still locks up on cold mornings. But every dollar goes into Lily's resp, into her school supplies, her art classes, her winter boots, her future, and that makes every frozen morning worth getting out of bed. The people who betrayed me are behind bars. Justice was done. The money was recovered and put in trust for the only innocent person in this entire mess. But the real victory isn't their punishment. It isn't the trial or the sentencing, or the look on my son's face when the handcuffs clicked. The real victory is upstairs. Asleep in a bedroom we painted yellow together, surrounded by her drawings of gardens and houses and families that stay. A wild rose bush growing on the windowsill because she read that you could grow them indoors if you gave them enough light. I did it for my son once. I'm doing it for his daughter now. My knees still ache. But the stairs I climb these days lead somewhere worth going.